All right, folks, let's talk about black-owned media. Yesterday on the Today Show, Carlos Watson, who is the founder of Ozzy Media, announced that despite what they announced on Friday, they're not going to be shutting the media company down. He sat down with Craig Melvin on Today's Show and talked about what took place last week with the company, said that he should have done more media interviews and did not like what was being reported about the company, and that he said that they're going to be like Lazarus and come back from the dead. Well, yesterday he taped an interview with The Breakfast Club, which aired today. And in that particular interview, 15-minute interview, he talked about a variety of things, answered their questions. During the interview, Charlemagne also revealed that he was an investor in Ozzy as well, apparently invested about $10,000. Well, during the interview, Carlos a couple of times called out me and Soledad O'Brien because we were critical of Ozzy and posts we made. But then at the end of the interview, he brought me up again. Listen to this.
Like, look through it. I'd be happy for people to do it. And I'd be happy for people to compare it apples to apples.
Are you going to talk to some of these people that's really criticizing you, like the Roland Martins? Would you sit down with Roland?
Would love to.
Okay.
Love to.
Roland, we're going to make that happen.
And, you know, I was disappointed in Roland, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I was disappointed in him, but you know what? Maybe I was wrong, and so I'm happy to learn and grow.
What disappointed you the most?
I thought that I thought it was a little bit of a crabs in the bucket sort of thing. I thought that immediately he saw us in trouble, and he just, more than anyone, he was the one retweeting and posting, and it was almost assassination-like. And given his experience at CNN and what happened to him, I thought he'd be the last person being involved in that kind of thing. And so, you know, it is what it is, and I've got to learn from that, and I've got to get better. But if you ever see me doing that, let me know if you see me doing that. I hope you will never see me doing that. I hope even if we have differences, you and I will have the conversation. I won't be out there trying to assassinate people in public along with the mob.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's Carlos Watson. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.
All right. So let me speak to that. Carlos, it's very clear that you don't follow me. It's abundantly clear that you don't follow me on social media, because if you did, you would realize that I often talk about media stories. I've been in media since I was 14 years old. This was not something that I fell into. I didn't go to school majoring in something else and then fell into media later like you did. I chose this when I was 14 years old. I'll be 53 years old on November 14th. So this has been my life for 39 years. And if anybody who follows me, they know I often post stories, retweet stories, comment on stories that deal with the media. When Joe Concha, who is a media and political columnist for The Hill, who's also with Fox News. Oh, check the timeline. You'll see the comments that I've made directly to him. The other thing is this here, Carlos. You saw what I had to say because I tagged you. See, I ain't no punk. I'm not going to comment about Ozzy and comment about you and not tag you. Uncle Roro don't subtweet. I'm real clear about being open and honest. Folks criticized me when I cracked on Sha'Carri Richardson for coming in ninth. Why'd you have to tag her? Because that's what I do. I don't subtweet. So anybody who follows me knows I'm often talking about media, talking about advertising, talking about all of those different things, because this is what I do. This is what I talk about. And I've discussed other media companies owned by black people. So this whole idea that somehow, oh, it's crabs in a bucket. First of all, it's called crabs in a barrel. It's not crabs in a barrel. And then to say, well, I saw an opportunity. I didn't see an opportunity. The fact of the matter is, I am a black-owned media company that's serving black people. that's targeting African Americans. There are others who watch my show who are not black, who do appreciate the show, and I've gotten emails from them, contributions from them. The reality, Carlos, I don't think I've ever heard you say you're a black-owned company. You probably have positioned yourself as saying, I'm a media company owned by somebody who's African American. The second thing, when you said you called it assassination. So you don't like the fact that I've retweeted others who have had negative things to say about you? Your former writer, Eugene Robinson, who wrote a very critical Substack about you, comments that you made about him. What? That can't be retweeted? Are you suggesting, Carlos, that I, as an African American who owns a media company, that you expected me to be quiet because it involved you? You and I don't have a relationship. We don't. Our paths have crossed. I remember the reason I think I have your phone number because Constance White, who used to write for Ozzy, I think she's still right. I don't know if she's writing for them, said, hey, you and Carlos ought to hook up. She either sent me the number or I sent you a message on LinkedIn, so I got your number. So after the interview yesterday, Charlamagne said, you should call me. You called me. I was busy yesterday with the George Lopez golf tournament. So my booker has already reached out to you, called you and text you about having you come on the show. You sat with the Breakfast Club for 50 minutes. Fine, Carlos. You come on Roland Martin Unfiltered in the Black Star Network, and let's have a conversation about what has transpired. And there's a series of questions that I do have for you. And I've watched the Craig Melvin interview and the interview with the Breakfast Club, and I've got a lot of follow-ups to some stuff that you had to say. But the thing for me, Carlos, that I need you to understand, and anybody who follows me knows this, the model that I have had my entire career has been this. If you do good, I'll talk about you. If you do bad, I'll talk about you. At the end of the day, I'll talk about you. So talking about Ozzy and reading the New York Times story by Ben Smith that I was quoted in, a subsequent story, reading the story from Forbes, reading Eugene Robinson's account, reading the other accounts as well, yes, I've seen those stories. And see, Carlos, you can't have it both ways where everybody is wrong and you're right. I'll give you a perfect example. I could hold it for the interview. I'm going to give you a perfect example. During your interview with the Breakfast Club, you castigated Ben Smith for writing about the mental health issues of your COO, the one who impersonated the YouTube executive. You said that shouldn't have been written about. Here's the problem with that. Later in the interview, see, I want you to understand, Carlos, how I listen to what somebody says. Later in the interview, Charlamagne came back and asked you about it and then said, well, you upset that Ben Smith wrote about it, but you the one who told Ben about the mental issue. And so had you not told Ben about the mental issue, how would Ben have written about the mental issue? Because you told him. See what happens when you listen? And so it's silly. It's nonsensical, Carlos, to act as if, oh, I was disappointed. And then you want to bring up what I went through at CNN. Well, what about it? See, I'll address things head on as well. And so are you suggesting, Carlos, that because I went through some drama at CNN 9 years ago, that somehow I can't speak about or talk about something else? Nah, bruh, that's not how that happens. And so it wasn't character assassination. It wasn't, ooh, I saw an opportunity. Because what you do at Ozzy is totally different than what I do. I own my blackness. I'm upfront about my blackness. I'm very clear about who I serve. I'm very clear about the audience that I am trying to speak to. And so there is no, again, oh my goodness, I am trying to gain some advantage. But I will say this, Carlos, and you and I We'll talk about this when we have the conversation. I will say to you, though, that it is important when we talk about what happened when it came to getting these advertising dollars. And you admitted in your interview with the Breakfast Club how you benefited from the battle. But Byron Allen and Todd Brown and myself and Butch Graves and Don Jackson and Junior Bridgman and Diddy and others have been engaged in because you have been able to sit back quietly and reap the benefits of the work that we put in. And so we'll see what happens right now. We'll see what happens with the future of Ozzy. I've seen a story in the New York Times where one of your investors is suing you right now for $2 million for failing to disclose what happened with Goldman Sachs and YouTube. We see that another story said the advertisers are staying clear of you. You know what? That's all your business. But what I am going to say, Carlos, I am more than willing to talk with you. I am in L.A. through Sunday. I know you were there in Silicon Valley. You were in New York, Today's Show, and doing the Breakfast Club. So I'm doing various one-on-one interviews for a new show on the Black Star Network called Rollin' with Roland. And so I have open slots, Carlos, tomorrow on Wednesday. I've got slots open on Thursday. All day Friday is open. Saturday is open. If you find yourself in L.A., come on by. I'll text you the address, and we can have a conversation right here. If you can't come, we'll have a conversation on the show. See, you said to Charlemagne, well, Charlemagne, if you see me doing something like this here, you will call me first. That means that you want to have an offline conversation. Well, he's one of the investors in your company. You have a relationship. I don't have a relationship with you. So you and I having a conversation offline. Why? You had one with Craig Melvin on the Today Show. You had one with Charlemagne, DJ Envy, and Angela Yee on the Breakfast Club. So we have a conversation. It's going to be a public conversation. And it should be. Because, again, I am a journalist. And what I was raised on, it was about truth, integrity, character, honesty. It was about being upfront and clear, owning mistakes, not accepting BS. But do not mistake, Carlos, that any criticism that I have is personal, it's a vendetta, that it's assassination, or anything along those lines. It's called truth. And truth is what reigns supreme. Truth is what matters. Not fudging, not being astray, not getting too out there, which you admitted in the interview that y'all did with some of your marketing things, how you, and I'll pull the comment up, how you sort of, strayed or, you were too aggressive, whatever, with some claims made. Where I come from, we call that lying. But we'll go over all of that in the conversation that we have. But don't ever, Carlos, get it twisted. Don't ever assume that anything I do is trying to assassinate somebody. It's called speaking truth. All day, every day, 24/7, 365, 366 in a leap year. Folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you. All of it.
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice
to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Sage Steele, anchor at ESPN. She is quite known for making other controversial comments that have ticked a whole bunch of black people off. Well, Sage stepped in it again when she did the podcast of former NFL quarterback Jay Cutler and some comments that she made about a variety of topics, including this about President Barack Obama.
When you fill out your census, I'm like, well, I don't know when the last time I filled out my census was, but if they make you choose a race, she's like, what are you going to put? I go, well, both. She's like, well, you can't. She goes, well, what if Barack Obama chose black and he's biracial? I'm like, well, congratulations to the president. That's his thing. I go, I think that's fascinating considering his black dad was nowhere to be found, but his white mom and grandma raised him. But hey, you do you. I'm going to do me.
Okay, that caused lots of problems there. Then the one that really ticked off a lot of people was this comment about women in media and what they wear.
But here's the thing, there is a fine line, and I handled it. Like, I didn't get anybody, because that's not my wasn't my personality then. I might now a little more. But I do think as women, we need to be responsible as well. It isn't just on players and athletes and coaches to act a certain way. I mean, I've had talks with young women who would come in and they'd intern with me, with our channel, or just other women who reach out to me now. And I've said to a couple of them, they're like, well, would you look at my tape? Would you do this? And I've said, listen, I would love to, but the way that you present yourself is not something I want to be associated with.
Yeah.
So when you dress like that, I'm not saying you deserve the gross comments, but you know what you're doing when you're putting that outfit on too.
Yeah.
Like, women are smart, so don't play coy and put it all on the guys when and again, I'm not saying anybody deserves anything.
Yes.
But we need to be responsible as women too, because we know what we're doing when we put certain things on and then return a certain text. Or you expect somebody's not going to see you if you go to dinner with this guy? Like, that's on us.
That's so true. And
All right, so a lot of this started because Sage Steele was not happy that she was forced to take the COVID vaccine if she wanted to keep her job at ESPN. Disney, like many companies, are requiring their employees to be vaccinated. This is what she had to say about vaccines.
I think I respect everyone's decision. I really do. But to mandate it is sick. And it's scary to me in many ways. But I have a job that I love, and frankly, a job that I need. But again, I love it. I just, I'm not surprised it got to this point, especially with Disney. I mean, a global company like.
Yes.
Well, so what are we now dealing with? Sage has apologized because this thing really blew up. This is her apology. Please pull it up. All right. She says, I know my recent comments created controversy for the company, and I apologize. We're in the midst of an extremely challenging time that impacts all of us, and it's more critical than ever that we communicate constructively and thoughtfully. Here's ESPN's statement. Please pull it up. All right, then. At ESPN, we embrace different points of view. Dialogue and discussion makes this place great. That said, we expect that those points of view be expressed respectfully in a manner consistent with our values and in line with our internal policies. We're having direct conversations with Sage, and those conversations will remain private. Now, here's what's very interesting when you analyze those particular statements. And it was journalist Karan Phillips. He actually tweeted this out. And he said, wow, quite the different statements from ESPN regarding, say, Steele compared to when ESPN issued their statements when Jamel Hill called Donald Trump a white supremacist. And I'm going to show you these two, and I found it to be, again, real interesting. So this was the ESPN statement that they sent out with Jamel Hill. The comments on Twitter from Jamel Hill regarding the president do not represent the position of ESPN. We've addressed this with Jamel, and she recognizes her actions were inappropriate. Now, that's totally separate than what they had to say about Sage Steele. Now, also in her particular comments, Sage, she had some positive things to say about, come back to me please, about Candace Owens, which was quite interesting. And so, look, Sage Steele has a history. She was of making some comments that she was quite, critical of Colin Kaepernick. There was a point when she was on a flight from Los Angeles and was upset about immigration protests that were going on. You might remember she accused a couple of black colleagues at ESPN accused them of actually keeping her out of a conversation dealing with race. And again, in her comments, she complimented that clueless fool Candace Owens. We know how idiot she is. The thing that also is, so check this out. So let me just go ahead and do this. I'm going to play for you what she had to say about Candace Owens. Here we go.
It's what?
Wait, what? Where did you read that?
I forget where I read it, but it made me laugh.
Wow. I respect the hell out of Candace Owens.
So do I.
And yeah, and I'm like.
First of all, you guys, the audio wasn't right, so I'm going to play that comment again. So I want you to hear it in full. Okay, so here we go.
And I'm like, I get it. Like, yeah, we all have opinions.
You're the Candace Owens of ESPN. It's what.
Wait, what? Where did you read that?
I forget where I read it, but it made me laugh.
Wow. I respect the hell out of Candace Owens.
So do I.
And yeah, and I'm like, I get it. Like, yeah, we all have.
You're the Candace Owens.
Allow me to unpack this, okay? First and foremost, Sage Steele has made comments in the past because she's biracial. And what she's done is, her deal is, why do you have to, leave out one parent and identify with another? Okay, I get it. But here's the thing that trips me off. The thing that's crazy here is that how dare you question how President Obama chooses to identify himself? Okay? How? What I don't understand is if that man chooses to self-identify, that's his business. Now, what's so idiotic about Sage's comments is that she was upset about having to choose a race. But if you go back to the first U.S. Census, you've had to identify a race since 1790. Since 1790. Okay? That to me is crazy. It's crazy. Okay? 1790. 1790, identify with race. But see, what's the problem here is for her to assert that, well, he grew up with a white mother and he didn't know his black dad, but he's identifying as black. Sage, your daddy's white. Your mama's black. Sage, let's be real clear. You are not walking out on the street anywhere and somebody goes, hey, there goes a white woman. You know it and I know it. Sage, here's the deal. And this is why I know your comment here is idiotic and makes no sense. When they had the issue on race, the special on race, and Michael Eves and L. Duncan were involved, you got upset because you were not included. Well, Sage, if you consider yourself a white woman, why would you be included? Okay, you're biracial. Got it. But that's just stupid. And you go, oh, I think it's fascinating. Halle Berry. Halle is biracial just like you. Halle Berry calls herself a black woman. There are other biracial people who call themselves the exact same thing. So for you to sit here and make this comment makes no sense whatsoever. And it's idiotic. And then when you're talking about how women are dressing, well, no, I'm not saying that these things should happen, but you got, what the hell? ESPN has removed her from a women's summit that they're doing as well. That's supposed to be happening in a couple of weeks. But it's very telling who you are as an individual. And here's the whole deal. I don't care if you are a Sage, a biracial conservative. But if I respect the hell out of Candace Owens, you're admitting you're an idiot. Because anybody who respects Candace Owens, who is absolutely stuck on stupid, who knows what the hell she's talking about, who knows what the hell she's saying, you actually respect that and call yourself a journalist? That's why you're getting questioned. That's why you're getting dragged. And you've earned every single bit of it. Period. And so, Sage, how about actually using some damn common sense with these nutcase takes that you have? And ESPN should have suspended you for a week. Should have. And maybe you're now going to learn. And here's the whole deal, Sage. Go to Fox Sports. Go to Fox News and join your former ESPN colleague, Will Cain. If that's the point of view that you want to offer, go right ahead. But really, stop with the gaslighting of black people because you're uncomfortable that an Obama will call himself black. And also, what the hell is his dad not being there have to do with it? In fact, Kerry Champion, let me pull this tweet up. Former ESPN anchor Kerry Champion weighed in on this, and I'm gonna pull it up to show you. And so because I just thought that this tweet was really important. So let me see here. Let me see if I can find it here. I just thought it was really, really interesting. What she tweeted, because I mean, it's just dumb. It's just really dumb when you see these comments coming from a black woman. Oh, sorry, a biracial woman in the case of Sage Steele. and this whole, woe is me and all this. I just, I'm tired of it. And this thing that, you are like somehow, because you are so conservative or whatever you want to call yourself, that's fine. But it's just ridiculous. It's just utterly ridiculous. This is the tweet from Carrie Champion. Sigh, my dad wasn't around when I was younger. I'm still black. That's what Carrie Champion tweeted. And she's right. So this notion that, if your dad wasn't around, that somehow dictates what we should call yourself on the census. Yeah, that's weak. And you know what? I'm bringing the panel here, Teresa. I'm just, it's really utterly ridiculous that Sage still continues to embarrass herself. I met Sage. I know Sage. We're not friends. I know if, seeing her at National Association of Black Journalists Convention and things along those lines. But I just don't, for the life of me, the comment that she made about Obama, and I just find it fascinating. He identifies as black and his dad wasn't even around. What the hell?
Yeah, that's the right question to ask, but especially for somebody who's in the journalism industry. I've watched Sage myself, and I've read her tweets. I've listened to her commentary. I've seen her at black conventions, and I've seen her at those black conventions identify as black and not biracial. So I feel like she is personally suffering something that I think and I have a lot of friends who are biracial person goes through, but I think she's just channeling it in a different way. There's certain individuals who I guess, who may be of the right persuasion who accepts her a little bit more. Now, it's okay to be Republican and conservative, but when it comes to, I think probably what took me back was how she embraced new individuals that come to her on the way that they dress. And again, as a black woman myself, 100%, if I didn't have a suit on, or if I didn't have the right dress on, it was at the right length, and I was bringing all this talent, or maybe my suitcase was locked in a storage room and I didn't have the key and I had to get to that meeting, is she saying that she will not even take the time to even talk to me? And again, that could be a missed opportunity. So as I listen to her, I almost feel just saddened. Because again, this is another, black white woman that is suffering something so deep that I feel like there has to be more to it. I mean, I've been one to say I'm not a fan of Candace Owens, but I also understand why people take to her, and part of that is she's spewing off some nonsense, and she's getting paid handsomely. And so those who are willing to sell their soul for 2 minutes of spotlight, and they give you a show and they give you branding, those are the people that, unfortunately we have those who want to be in the mix and just don't know how to get in. So they model it and they feel like this is where they need to go. So fortunately, we just could pray for our sister.
And look, apparently her dad is black, mom white. Okay, fine. Either way, it doesn't matter. But it's still nonsensical. And again, if you're biracial, Mustafa, that's fine. If you want to identify as white and black, I got no problem with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. But what's stupid to me, what's absolutely idiotic to me, is this somehow notion that a person doesn't get to decide that they do. And his dad not being anywhere there has nothing to do with any of this.
Well, when you have folks like Sage saying the stuff that she does, it's almost like a headline in the National Enquirer. People say these types of things because they want attention. And not only do they want attention, but they also, as Teresa said, are trying to set themselves up for their next gig. My problem is more on the substance of the things that she's talking about. So when you say that you never filled out the census, then that tells me that you're not also concerned about, the resources that are tied to that can help our communities to be able to move forward. So that's about substance. When you say that, you're against mandates for vaccines, then you don't unpack that, because we understand that our communities disproportionately are dying from that. So if you don't see yourself connected to the African American community, it plays out in the decisions that you are making in your personal life. And then, of course, also, when she made that comment about the young sister coming to her that Teresa just talked about, that also says something. When you're not willing to invest the time with a younger person to help them to get together the things that may be necessary for them to navigate, you know, the corporate world or the sports world, then that also says something about you and your commitment to those individuals or to folks who come from a similar set of backgrounds that you may be, that you came from. So you gotta look at the substance of what the sister is saying and then begin to unpack whatever trauma or hurt that she might be dealing with based upon, you know, how she came up and the decisions that she's currently made. You know, I'm concerned with the message that she's sending about the substance of things that actually impact our communities. You know, she want to be on Fox News, that's all good. But don't put our people continually in the crosshairs by the decisions that you're making when you know what the facts are. She's a bright young lady. So she knows all these things that are happening inside of our communities, and she should be much more careful with the things that she's spouting.
Michael, look, I don't care what her personal issues are. I don't care what drama she's going through. Bottom line is this here. When you make these type of comments where you're questioning someone else, hey, it's foul, it's wrong, and when you're in a responsible position, you need to do.
Yeah, Roland, yeah, that's true. They need to do better. But, you know, first of all, I pay very little attention to Sage Steele. I read the article that the Griot has about these comments and the blow up. But, you know, to quote a great South African freedom fighter, Bantu Stephen Biko, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And she's a perfect example of that. So we just go through and just look at some of these idiotic comments she made. She talked about President Barack Obama identifying as black on the census, and then she said she doesn't remember the last time she filled out a census form. Hopefully it was 2020, because that's when the last census was. Hopefully it was 2020 last time she filled it out. Secondly,
right. I mean, she literally said, "Oh, I can't remember the last time I filled out the census. Last year. It was last year.
Exactly, last year.
It's every 10 years. It was last year.
Right. But Colin Kaepernick was raised by two white adoptive parents. Okay, he identifies as black. Okay, basically. Okay, so you know.
No. Hold on. He was He was raised by two adoptive white parents.
White parents, yes.
Colin's saying I'm black.
Yes, exactly. And then, you know, she talked about Candace Owens. Well, Cutler brought up Candace Owens, and she took it as a compliment to Candace Owens of ESPN, what have you. Well, Candace Owens is an idiot who is ignorant of history. So, you know, Sage Steele may take that as a compliment. The other thing is, when we go to Disney and a vaccine mandate, Sage Steele has tested positive for COVID-19, according to the Wrap and thegrio.com. She's tested positive for COVID-19 previously. So for her to have a problem with the vaccine mandate at Disney, and they're trying to, usually these companies have vaccine mandates because they want to keep people safe and they're trying to save lives. Okay, but usually a lot of these corporations, I don't know if this applies to Disney, but a lot of corporations is either get vaccinated by a certain date or get tested once a week. How is it at Disney, Roland? Do you know? Do they have the option to get tested once a week or twice a week?
Hell no. You got to be vaccinated. And I'm with Disney 100%. And guess what? Sage wanted to keep that high-paying ass job, and that's why she got that damn shot. And let's just be real honest here. The reason we have been able to see the increase in vaccinations is because companies have mandated it. And that's the whole point. And this is real simple. If you want to have your freedom and you want to do whatever you want to, there's no problem. But it doesn't mean you're going to be able to keep the jobs that you have. That's what this thing is all about.
Okay. And the reason why I asked that is because the mandate from Joe Biden using the Labor Department for companies that have employees of 100 or more, that is a either a vaccine mandate or get tested once a week. That's why I asked.
No. But first, but again, a company can make their own rules. They don't have to follow that particular plan there. And so, just like all the major airlines have now announced that United Airlines, 97% of all of their employees have now had the vaccine because it was mandated. Now JetBlue, Southwest Airlines, and the others are following suit as well. And so that's what we're seeing. But look, I'm glad to see ESPN suspended her because it was idiotic and it should teach her a lesson. But it just made no sense whatsoever. The Obama comment and the comments about women and what they dress. Folks, back to that road mark unfiltered video in just one moment.
Betty is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon. So now she's free to become Bear Hug Betty. Settle in, kids. You'll be there a while. Ooh, where you going?
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig? All right, so Shalonda Baker has been nominated to run the Office of Minority Economic Impact by President Joe Biden. Well, Republicans are not happy. Utah Senator Mike Lee is blocking her appointment because he doesn't like comments that she has made in the past about systemic racism in our capitalistic system. Well, he had to get educated on the floor of the United States Senate by Senator Cory Booker. Watch this.
I would ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to Shalonda H. Baker to be the Director of the Office of Minority Economic Impact in the Department of Energy, that the nomination be confirmed.
Is there objection? Ms. Baker stated the following, and I quote, "As we move into this new future, we must also remember that a just transformation of our energy system requires a careful interrogation of the racist capitalist politics that currently drive it. We must expose, then eradicate these underpinnings," close quote. I oppose Ms. Baker's nomination, and I object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Senator from New Jersey.
there is a difference between saying I am against capitalism and I am against racist capitalistic policies. That's a big difference. We are a nation that exploded forth to be the dominant economy on the planet through the capitalist system. But the capitalist system was not fair and equal all the time. In fact, it did not reflect what Adam Smith himself in his essay on moral sentiments talked about. Capitalism is an ideal that the best way to distribute goods and opportunity is through this idea of a free market where everyone has access. Clearly, that has not been the case in this nation. I know this from my own family story about my father here in this area coming after college and being the first black person hired by a small tech company the president may have heard of called IBM. First black salesman in the entire Virginia area. As walls were broken, my father told me the story of why he left his company that he was working with because one of his managers said, "You should get out of here because no nigger is ever going to be allowed to be a manager at this company." That's racism. So here's a nominee who, in the context literally that my colleague read, racist capitalist policies, no one can deny that these policies existed in our country and that the free market system hasn't been free. In America, 1 in 3 households are energy insecure, meaning that they have difficulty paying their energy bills. And research has unfortunately shown that low-income households, disproportionately black and brown households, are more likely to be energy insecure. Energy justice isn't something we talk nearly enough about. And that's why Ms. Baker's role is so important. There's an urgency right now to create deeper community in this country and to ensure that everyone has the fruits of liberty and opportunity. It's what we swear an oath to. It's what Ms. Baker's job is all about, is making reals on the words of our united pledge that we will be a nation with liberty and justice for all.
Reese, if people want to know why it is important to have black progressive voices in the United States Senate, that was a 3-minute and 18-second edited example of how, if you have all these white folks in the Senate with no clue about the reality of what it means to be black in this country, that was a lesson for Senator Mike Lee.
A lesson that probably fell on deaf ears, but shout out to Senator Cory Booker because he's one of two who, now we have Senator Raphael Warnock, who is also a champion in the Senate. But I also want to point out we don't have any black women senators either. So it's very interesting that defending a black woman in her absolutely correct commentary, Shalonda Baker, fell to Senator Cory Booker. This is why it's important to have representation. It goes beyond just simply the vote tallying. It goes into a lot of these very key personnel decisions. Vice President Kamala Harris has had to break a lot of ties in terms of invoking cloture on different nominees. Almost all of them have been people of color. And so the Republicans have made it clear it doesn't really matter what you have said in your past. They'll find something, just like they made up shit that was supposedly wrong with what Kristen Clark said and Vanita Gupta, and they blocked Neera Tanden because, you had some progressives that were salty about her tweet. The bottom line is the Republican Party is always going to fight against a more equitable society. They're always going to fight against representation. And we know that when black women are in positions of power and positions of leadership, things are more fair and are more equitable. And that's why somebody like Ms. Baker is a threat. And I'm so glad that Senator Cory Booker was there, because even though Mike Lee will not give a damn about anything that he said, Senator Cory Booker does act as the conscience of the Democratic Congress, along with Raphael Warnock, and letting them know, the Mansions and the other ones that hide behind Manchin and Sinema, no, y'all not about to do wrong by this black woman. So I'm just letting you know right now how it's about to go down. But the Republicans are a lost cause.
Raji.
Look, to hear Senator Booker just school this guy, take him to school on history, that's sad. That's the sad part about it is, you are a paid elected official, and even as a paid elected official, a white paid elected official, you get just shook up and get all discombobulated by somebody calling policies racist and capitalist. That's if that's not white frailty, I don't know what is. We're at that point right now in our Congress where you can't even say the word racist, and then you gotta explain to somebody, a grown-ass man, that there have been racist policies. And I love what Senator Booker said. We're talking about, energy justice. You got to explain this to a grown-ass elected official? Come on. So we got to go back to square one to talk about how this country has been built and all of the things that have led us to this point that have been both racist and capitalist and have not been in the best interest of our people in this country, nor has it been in the best interest of white people, if you really look at it. So at this point, it's like, this is just sad. And yes, we can say, oh, he got schooled, but it's like you schooling a 5-year-old or something. You're a grown man. You don't know this stuff. And you getting so upset because somebody said your not even saying your policy, it said the policies. So it's talking about years of policies that have not been in the best interest of Black and brown communities, and you getting upset.
Sad. I know, Reese, you have to go top of the hour, so we certainly appreciate you joining us on the show. Thank you so very much. Dr. Greg Carr, this is the reality that we have to always talk about. White folks in this country have operated in their full totality of whiteness. They are oblivious to the realities of what we've had to deal with. And when you see these fools fighting critical race theory, even though it's not being taught in schools, when you see them fighting history, not history, when you see them fighting diversity, equity, and inclusion, what they want to do is they want to maintain the facade of this great American empire that has always loved everybody, cherished everybody. It is open and free to all one. So any of you who dare criticize it, what you are doing is an abomination against God. That's what we're dealing with. What Senator Mike Lee represented, Dr. Carr, was the full essence of white supremacy.
Indeed he did. Indeed he did. That's right, Roland. I mean, and Mike Lee is being primary. Remember, Mike Lee came to the Senate in the Tea Party wave and was reelected. But he's being primaried, including a guy who won 20% of the vote when Donald Trump ran in the primaries out in Utah. So he's a little scared. I don't even know if that little speech he'd made was about Shalonda Baker or Cory Booker as much as he was playing to the cheap seats back in Utah because he wants to he's up in 2022. And the sad thing about it, and here I'll quote one of the stalwarts of the soft white nationalist set, Senator Joe Manchin out of West Virginia, who when confronted with his recalcitrance and his obstructionism, simply replied, elect more liberals. You're right, blow-dry cosplay coal miner. You have to bust the Senate out from the inside. Sadly, and I agree with everything that's been said by both Reese and Faraji, by you, brother. You know, Cory Booker is trying to speak a language they don't understand, but even in what he said, here's a man with Stanford, Yale Law, got a Cecil Rhodes Fellowship that went to Oxford. Surely he has read The Wealth of Nations a little bit more closely than he did to make Adam Smith a hardcore racist who called all Black people, including his daddy bloodline, savages, said China was a fraud, and said that the reason capitalism would triumph was because it's going to come on the wings of white men. Surely he read The Wealth of Nations a little bit closer than to hold that up as some kind of defense of this sister, which really in the end translates to this, Roland, exactly what you said. We find ourselves in this country, particularly the Black elite, including elected officials, continuing to try to prop up the myth-making of American exceptionalism and thinking that it's somehow we can just prop it up the right way. These hardcore white nationalists walking, as you just said beautifully, in the fullness of their whiteness will look and say, oh, I'm sorry. But, in the words of Mary J. Blige, you can't be sitting here wondering why they don't love you the way that you love them. Corey, we got to take off the glove and go elect some more people and bust Mike Lee out from the inside. He's not even thinking about you.
Folks, back to that Roland Martin unfiltered video in just one moment.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on? Sure, it's wireless. Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable. That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too. Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you. All of
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own, a Black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all. I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
All right, folks, Dave Chappelle has a new Netflix special. It's called The Closer. Well, not sitting well with a number of LGBT organizations. GLAAD and others, including the National Black Justice Coalition, they are calling for Netflix to remove the special, saying Dave continues to make homophobic and transphobic comments. Last night, he had a screening of his documentary at the Hollywood Bowl. I was in attendance. He made it perfectly clear. He said he's not concerned. He is not going to get canceled. Joining us right now is David Johns. David leads, of course, the organization I was just speaking about. That is the preeminent Black LGBT organization. So, David, glad to have you back on the show. So please explain to us, why should, from your perspective, Netflix remove this Dave Chappelle special?
First, let me say thank you, Roland, for creating space for us to have this conversation. I want to be clear in that it was the desire of the National Black Justice Coalition for us to do this, to have this conversation. And for me, it made sense to make this invitation to Brother Dave Chappelle to have versions of this conversation, including by demanding that Netflix take down the special, because Netflix has offered up resources to help us deal with many of the things that most of us who love Black people care about, which is white supremacy. So I want to be clear in stating that I celebrate Dave Chappelle's comedic enterprise. I appreciate the ways in which so many people rest in the ability to laugh and celebrate and just take a break from the stress and trauma of being Black in this country. And I continue to be astounded by what feels like a lazy attempt at this craft by someone who has demonstrated the ability to be a genius, and forgetting that there are some of us who are also Black and LGBTQIA+. And so, again, all of this to say that I'm very well aware of Mr. Chappelle's comments about resting in the privilege that allows him to feel no regard for the implications of his comedy. And as someone who leads an organization that cares greatly about the overlooked and neglected needs of Black, queer, trans, and non-binary people, I'd like us all to do a little bit better.
So how do you respond to folks who say, look, these are comedians. They talk about everybody. They talk about Black people. They talk about gay people. They talk about trans people. They talk about women. They talk about politicians. Yeah. They talk about everybody. Many comedians say that's what comedians do. You're not going to a keynote speech. You're going to a comedy show.
Right. What I would acknowledge is, okay, and the next step is to talk about then what, right? So comedy is an art form. It's a form of entertainment that, when we think about the ways that Dave Chappelle has shown up, provides entree, right? Opportunities for us to think more critically and to engage more responsibly with each other. And so for me in particular, I am very much interested in this because Brother Chappelle and I purport to care about Black people. And in particular, when the comedy could lead to Black people, in particular Black people who are women, who are trans, queer, non-binary, who do not have the privilege to say, I don't care what people are saying about me because they're millionaires and have deals with Netflix, right? When we're talking about everyday people who don't have those privileges, I remain concerned about the implications of the jokes or the art form. And let's just keep it a buck, right? We're Black people. And a part of this, what I've heard is people say, like, it's jokes. You should just be roasted. And there's two things that are important for me. One is that's about community, right? If I am in a situation where we're playing the dozens, we should be on equal footing. The ability for Dave Chappelle to make jokes about women and Black trans folks, which are a race when we assume that all queer, trans, and non-binary folks are white, diminishes the ability for people to actually engage in a conversation or to punch back or to otherwise respond. And ultimately, what I'm continuing to try and remind people is that I care about Black folks who are ignored and who are erased. It is the Black lesbians who are beaten in Chelsea because of white supremacy and then made to be victims because their accusers highlight the ways in which their Blackness overcomes the discrimination they experience as a result of their sexual identity or gender orientation. I remain concerned about Black trans students who are beaten in schools where people laugh at them and say that it is your fault, that if you had just shown up and been tougher and if you had not been sensitive, then this would not have been a thing. What I am concerned about is how people respond to the jokes, what people do as a result of the jokes. And to make this point particularly clear, there is a defense, a trans panic defense, which is often offered when Black trans women are murdered. I want to be clear that I offered this in the statement that I released, that MBJC released when this became a thing, which is to say that this matters at a point in time in which Black trans women are murdered at a disproportionate rate. That has happened every year since I've had the pleasure of leading this organization. And what I remain concerned about is that the murder, the violence against Black, queer, trans, and non-binary folks, the violence against Black women more generally is ignored when people say, oh, it's just a joke, you should laugh at it. There are some of us who don't have that privilege. And I would like for all of us to be able to have this conversation while celebrating that Dave Chappelle has the right to say what he wants to say. There are also some of us who should have the right to be critical of what it is that he says.
You said something there where you said that you're playing the dozen, you have the ability to actually punch back. But the reality is, comedians are on stage all across the country, all across the world. Whether it's a Netflix special, whether it's the Laugh Factory, whether it's any comedy venue in Chicago and New York, Houston, they're all over the country. So is there a difference when a comedian says something and they're talking about anybody? Don Rickles ripped everybody. Lisa Lampanelli. I've heard people actually put on social media, they said if Bernie Mac was alive today, Bernie Mac would get canceled. Richard Pryor would get canceled. So is that part of this conversation? Are we establishing a separate standard? Are we trying to establish the same standard for comedians as we do politicians? Isn't that different being on the comedic stage?
Yeah, I'm not interested in establishing standards. What I'm interested in is all Black people being free. And more specifically, what I want is for Black women, Black, queer, trans, and non-binary folks to not be forced to make the decision to show up and be visible, to have public jobs that require us or invite us to have these conversations, or to be safe. What is missed is that jokes about beating up lesbian women and not liking trans women because they have Adam's apples, or reducing trans people to their genitalia is often a factor in the violence that members of our community experience. And so what I'm interested in is a more meaningful conversation where Black people in particular who purport to care about Black people are more conscious of the ways in which white supremacy is operationalized, and we do a better job to acknowledge intersectionality. I want to be clear, to the extent that I believe that it has been lost heretofore, that I appreciate what I believe is Dave Chappelle saying that that the dragon he is attempting to slay is white supremacy. That is why this matters to me. That is why it was important for MBJC to engage in this discussion. We care about Black people, all of us being free. Now, to the extent that the jokes, one, dismiss or provide cover for or allow people to get away with violence against our community, that's a point at which we have an issue. And again, the invitation is for us to have more meaningful conversations about the ways in which people use jokes, our humor, our comedy to dismiss the things that actually are meaningful and show up as barriers in terms of our ability as Black people to live self-actualized lives, to be free, to other.
Questions from each one of my panelists. Let me lost David's audio. Y'all let me know when we actually have it back. So questions from each one of the panelists. First off, Tammy, your question for David Johns.
Mr. Johns, how do you reconcile, cancel culture being so easy for someone to just get canceled at this point? And something that I say a lot, clemency through ownership, which is literal and figurative. The figurative component meaning say sorry so you can be forgiven. So if Dave Chappelle were to apologize for his comments, would you still have the same sentiments of, pushing for him to be quote unquote canceled, given the fact that in this,
he's not apologizing. Just real quick. He ain't apologizing. Last night's show, he made it perfectly clear. No. He made it perfectly clear. He ain't apologizing. And in fact, Stevie Wonder even came on stage and talked about what we should be canceling. He was there in support of Dave. All right, David, go ahead.
I don't know that I had anything to say. I was actually cut out of the conversation because of the audio. But again, I would just simply highlight that it must be nice.
Hold on. Dave, what's it? David, hold on. David, hold on. David, hold on. So you didn't hear a question?
I did not. I heard the last part of your comment as I was able to come back in.
Tammy. Hold on. So Tammy, restate your question to David so he can answer.
Please.
Okay. So be clear. Dave Chappelle is not apologizing. He said if this is what canceling is, he loves it, right? So my thing is, how do you reconcile, informing and educating the community, right, about the importance of not, being rude or belittling the LGBTQ community, but also not being so quick to cancel whenever our culture doesn't necessarily fully comprehend and understand the significance and the cultural impact of some of these statements sometimes. And I said that I always say clemency through ownership, which is literal and figurative. Say sorry to be forgiven.
Got it.
And we know that he's not going to apologize.
David?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tammy. Really thoughtful question. I want to acknowledge that this is not easy at all. There's no simple answer. I don't want to suggest that there is. I do want to name that it must be nice to rest in the privilege of being a millionaire who can say whatever you want without regard for how it might impact other people who do not have access to the privilege that you have been afforded to have access to, and just simply do and be and say. And again, what's challenging for me is knowing that the reality is that so many of us, not all of us, I don't purport to speak for all of us, but so many of us do not have that privilege. We are on track to have this year be the deadliest year with regard to the murders of Black trans women. And often, NBJC issues statements, much like the statement we issued around Dave Chappelle, around the murders of Black trans women, that doesn't get a modicum of the traction or energy that this has received. And so my hope is that while Mr. Chappelle continues to do whatever he will do, because he's privileged enough to do that, that we will continue to have these conversations. And that as a community of people who purport to care about Black people, that we will do better, not only with regard to our language and with regard to how we have conversations with one another, but how we protect and support one another in more meaningful and measurable ways.
Michael.
All right. How you doing, David? Don't necessarily have so much of a question, but a comment and an observation here. And I've been reading this about Dave Chappelle. I haven't seen the special yet. One of the criticisms that he's getting is defense of comments that the baby made that people are saying were homophobic as well. And we know the baby got canceled and disinvited from different events. And the concern that I have is that when African Americans are dehumanized, whether it's in music, whether it's in specials called the N-word, B's, and things like this, the outrage doesn't take place to talk about removing that artwork that dehumanizes African Americans. But and very quickly here, so the baby got disinvited from different events and festivals for making homophobic remarks on stage that was not part of a song. It wasn't recorded, anything like that. But he got invited to the festivals after making songs that dehumanize Black people. And people are largely silent on that, okay? So that see, that's the conflict that I have, okay? So, you know, that's my perspective on this.
Okay.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And for me, the problem with the jokes and the presentation of this conversation via this big platform is that it affirms this lie that all Black people are cis, heterosexual, and think and operate in the same way, and all queer people are white. And that is a lie.
Right.
And so if we step back from that, the thing that I find frustrating is that most people are now engaging in this conversation without regard for the fact that, as Dave Chappelle referenced, the baby shot somebody in Walmart and then rapped about it in a song where he told his child, I would do it again. That is a problem. We talk so much about violence in the Black community. I want to offer a footnote. There are so many people who have been introduced to MBJC for the first time. Welcome to what we do. We're not new to this. We engage in similar conversations when we're talking about Tony McDade, the Black trans man who was murdered the same week that George Floyd was murdered by the Tallahassee Police Department. We show up and talk about and support Jazz Mechanic, a founder of this organization who has been in the space before, to talk about Ed Buck, a perpetrator of violence, systemic violence against Black, queer, and same-gender-loving men in particular. We show up and talk about this with regard to Nigel Shelby and Black students who are bullied and suspended. We agree in the space of wanting to ensure that all Black people can be free. For me, it's important to highlight for folks that don't have access to the information, who would never read a book about intersectionality, who don't know anything about Kimberly Crenshaw's groundbreaking essay mapping the intersections, to appreciate that as long as there have been Black people, there have been Black, queer, trans, and non-binary people. We have always been beautifully diverse. The issue with the special, and I encourage you to watch it, which is vexing for me in this space where I'm like, we shouldn't be continuing to talk about this, but it also provides us with opportunities to talk about this, is to simply say this. We agree. We're only having this conversation because Dave Chappelle says in the special, I care about Black people, and my issue is white supremacy. What is missed so often, particularly with regard to Mr. Chappelle's comedy, is that intersectionality is a thing. And there are Black, queer, trans, and non-binary and non-conforming people. And it is us, not white people. It is not white queer people. He talks about LGBTQ people as if they are white and talks about the movement that they are winning. It is them, white folks, who win, not us. When these jokes happen without this critical conversation, it is Black, queer, trans, and non-binary people who are victims of the kind of violence that he jokes about, who get beaten up because their Adam's apple is too large, or because their hands are too big, or because they do not show up in the ways that white people and the things that we all hold to this level of being the things that we should all do. When we are not able to achieve that, we are the victims of it. And that is the thing that I care most about. I also want to be clear that this is not about, to the extent that we can't cancel Dave Chappelle. Roland has made this apparently clear. He's been on Instagram with all of his friends. This is about us as Black folks who purport to care about Black folks doing better.
Kelly.
First and foremost, thank you, David, for coming on and speaking about this. I'm a huge fan of yours. I follow you on everything. But I wanted to make clear how, and it's more of a comment than a question, but I would love your thoughts on it, how cancel culture has been just very conflated when it comes to accountability. I don't see this as being a canceling Dave Chappelle notion so much as it is the fact that all Black lives matter, and Dave Chappelle and other people who have the privilege of having a platform as large as Netflix need to be held accountable to the notion that all Black lives matter, that there are ways to be funny and to critique culture and to critique society without disparaging the most marginalized among us, especially within the Black community. And
yes,
and finally, well, kind of finally, I saw a lot of comments over the past couple of days, and I want to make note that I have not seen the special, but his previous specials also touched on this, so I feel like I can say a little bit of it. But the fact that people are saying, oh, you're violating his First Amendment rights, et cetera, people forget that the First Amendment was made to protect the most marginalized voices among the American body. So the fact that we are still silencing the most marginalized within the marginalized community that is Black people by saying that, you know, Dave Chappelle is able to say whatever he wants simply because he's a Black man, that is a disservice to not only Dave Chappelle and the LGBTQ plus community, but it's also a disservice to how the First Amendment is supposed to be exercised. So it's like, why is it that the most marginalized among us have to remain silent when the First Amendment is actually supposed to protect them?
I love you, and not just because you were singing my song, but because you were thinking critically. And I want to be clear that I don't expect, nor do I want people to always agree with me, but I do want us to be able to have conversations about how we do better to ensure that all of us can get free. And the thing that I've struggled most with is the hypocrisy of so many people who have continued to say to me, it's just a joke. I found it funny, therefore you should say nothing about it. If Dave Chappelle had the freedom to make jokes, as he will clearly continue to do, I and other people should have the freedom to say, I watched the special twice over. I also know that this is not new, and I didn't find it funny. And two truths can exist at the same time. Beyond that, to your point, Kelly, I will continue to say that my issue and interest is in ensuring that all of us can be free. We are now actively having a fight, a conversation that hopefully will lead to us being able to pass the Equality Act. And the issue for me is that too many Black people consider the Equality Act a gay piece of legislation, something that will benefit white gay people or LGBTQ people generally, because again, the assumption is that all gay people are queer. And the reality is it's a civil rights piece of legislation. It addresses fundamental gaps in legislation that exist around the pieces of legislation that most Black people will name when they talk about the things that they care most about with regard to civil rights, right? This includes things like ensuring that Black women cannot be fired because of the way that they wear their hair, ensuring that all of us cannot be kicked out of a rideshare like an Uber or a Lyft because of the way that we show up in the world. I care about Black people. I really don't care as much about what George Carlin has to say or Rosie O'Donnell. What I care about is acknowledging that in this moment, there is someone who has an extreme platform, who has an extreme amount of wealth, an extreme amount of privilege, who purports to care about Black people. And I'm simply saying that if you purport to care about Black people, I would like to know if you actually care about all of us. And for me, that's the question that is being pressed at this moment. Heretofore, it has been possible for folks to say, I care about Black people, and that be code word for saying, I care about some of us. Those of us who show up in the ways that affirm me and the way that I make sense of the way that I show up in the world. The question now is, do you care about all of us? And here's the thing, we can disagree. You can say to me, I only care about Black cis straight folks. I only care about Black folks from New York. And that's fine. I just need to know where you are because there is so much more work to do to ensure that we can all be free. That's my goal.
Thank you.
David Johns, National Black Justice Coalition. We surely appreciate it, David. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Folks, back to that Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment.
time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on that.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig? So yesterday, Dr. Cleo Monago sent me a text message asking me were we going to be weighing in on this Dave Chappelle issue. I said, sure. He joins us right now. Cleo, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mr. Martin. How are you?
Man, where are you? You in the basement somewhere? I can barely see you.
Yeah, can you see? I'm sorry about that. I'm in South America at a hotel because I'm presenting to the faculty of the University of San Buenavista in Cali, and I didn't know I was going to be doing this, so I didn't bring lights and camera with me, so I'm doing the best I can do.
All
Can
right.
you see me at all, though?
All right, it's all good. Yeah, we can see you. We can see you. Let's get right to it, Cleo. You wanted to weigh in on this issue. You sent me a text, a long text. I said, man, that's too much typing. Say that on TV. You heard the interview there with David. You've seen the stories. Folks saying, drop the special, get rid of the special. Dave Chappelle is wrong. He should not be making these comments. Your take.
Okay, well, like you said, my message was long, so because this is a very dimensional issue. I appreciated some of what David said, which I think was provoked by the conversation here, because what he was talking about previously that I first saw was a part of what we're talking about as cancel culture, and for Netflix to cancel David Chappelle's The Closer. And I finally saw it. I mean, when I first heard about this controversy, I hadn't seen it yet. I finally saw it this morning. And my perspective after I saw it was definitely I don't support the show being canceled. One of the things that was said in your conversation with David is about the importance of us having conversations, and I've been saying that for a while, that we need to be having Black, acculturated and informed conversations about these issues. I think the reason that David Chappelle talks about LGBTQ and queer and all that as white, because white people are its foundation, white culture is how it's rolled out, and the people that lead it in this country that have the most power are particularly whites. Black people are marginalized by that community, and one of the things that David Chappelle talked about in one of his previous stand-ups was that reality. But what I want to focus on here is that I care about everybody, Black. I care about Black trans people and what's been happening among trans Black people. That 21 that was identified as murder. I care about the 9,013 Black people who were murdered at large, 8,469 Black men, 1,440 Black women, and the 21 trans people that we know about who have been murdered. They all matter to me. But what's being ignored, and frankly, I think the gay paradigm encourages the ignoring of Black contextual historical issues, is that David, regardless of his means and et cetera, is someone who cares about Black people and Black life. And one of the things that he said at the very ending of his program was empathy should go both ways in terms of Black people and the LGBTQ white-led community, and toward Black people. There should be empathy both ways, and historically there has not been. And that community has been known to be marginalizing of Black issues, Black concerns, and it encourages Black people to go along with its agenda and its perspective instead of addressing contextual and cultural issues. And that's what comedian David Chappelle is trying to do. And I emphasize that he's a comedian because he's not a social scientist. He's not a behavioral health scientist. He's not a history major. He doesn't know the facts about the human story here. He probably does not know the issue of gender and gender nuance from an African perspective because that's not his background. So he's an American citizen who's talking about what he sees. And what he sees, which is because he's not blind, is an LGBTQ community that's white-led and practices racism. For example, and there's tons of them, in California when Ed Buck did what he did, the white gay community knew about it because it had been reported, and they didn't come up in arms against the murder of Black men at Ed Buck's home. And I got tons of examples of that community not being supportive of Black people. But I want to get back to some issues that David raised so people won't get confused, because David said over and over again that Black people are queer, Black people are trans, Black people, et cetera. This is a diverse community. I have a relatively large following online as well, and there are lots of trans, same-gender loving, et cetera, people who support David Chappelle's perspective, who doesn't have the perspective of the National Black Justice Coalition. Some of them look at this through the lens of being Black. And what I mean, again, by that is David Chappelle is an advocate for the defense and empowerment and justice for Black people. And I believe that includes Black men, women, and everybody else. And as a result of us not considering that and looking at this simply from a gay defensive lens, we're not even looking at the fact that if you look at his special from the whole context, he had a very endearing and loving story about a trans friend of his. And that's not being talked about among the people who are critiquing him. And the very few times it is referenced is poo-pooed because, frankly, there's a tendency in this society to poo-poo what Black men say, whether they're millionaires or not, because this is an anti-Black society that does attack Black men. And I'll finish this tangent with this because I hope to respond to questions. One of the things that clearly concerns David Chappelle is Black manhood. And one of the things that I want to talk about at some point is the underpinning of why there's anxiety. I mean, he did a lot of bashing, if you will, around masculine traits of some trans people and made fun of it, which I found disturbing. And I understand contextually why people who are struggling, because transgender people struggle. Transgender people are bullied. Transgender people, well as all kinds of other Black people, frankly, at larger numbers, are murdered and killed. But focusing on this issue, there are situations that lead to the death of trans people, and there's teasing and bullying and a misunderstanding or judgment around being too male, too female. All this stuff is actually occurring. But canceling the likes of David Chappelle cancels the opportunity to have a conversation about some of the things that's really causing Black people, including David Chappelle, anxiety along these lines. We're concerned about the emasculation of Black men. We're concerned about if what all Black men have gone through historically has led to gender confusion. I'm not saying that is my perspective. My perspective is nuanced, and I don't want to get into that now unless it comes out of some questions. But there's some, he's known, David Chappelle is known for being one of the comedians who was given a whole lot of money to put on a dress, and he said no. And instead of engaging meaningfully from a Black perspective why he said no, and what he was worried about, he was simply called femophobic, homophobic, transphobic. And that's what the LGBT community does, even when Black people take on that paradigm. We don't engage Black anxiety and perspective around these issues to be educated about what's really going on. And if we did talk about the anxiety among Black people regarding the compromise of Black men, the impact of police brutality, the impact of castration, whether it was physical or social, all of these attacks on black males and now the particularly black and male cancel culture. This is causing a rise in black people some anxiety that is not being engaged and unpacked. Instead, folks are calling people homophobic and transphobic and canceling them. And just like with the baby, as I said when I talked about that, instead of getting on the baby's case simply and marginalizing him or re-marginalizing him like this country tends to do to black men, we should have said, why did you say that? What inspired that perspective? What made you feel compelled at a concert that was not about homosexuality or sucking penises in the park? How did that come to mind for you, Jonathan? That's his real name. And the answers to that question, if he could actually bear them, would be very educational about what black people are going through, what black men are going through, what the anxiety is about this emasculation issue among black men, which is at the core of some of David Chappelle's anxieties in comedy.
All right, got it. Questions now from panelists. Tammy, first. And folks, I need tight questions, tight answers. Tammy, you're first.
Thank you, Roland. And thank you, Roland, for giving us all this platform. I wanted to just ask you, how do you reconcile the fact that there have been other people that give underrepresented groups a voice and a platform who may have themselves been under the scrutiny of trying to be canceled, but people are not talking about that and the work that they've done to enhance black culture, similar to Dave Chappelle?
Is your question is why is the cancellation of other people not coming up? Is that your question?
Well, the attempts to cancel other people who have actually done good for the black community, when I don't believe that anybody with a wide platform, with a large following, is intentionally trying to alienate the LGBTQ community.
Well, let's put Mr. Chappelle in context. He's a comedian. People like him and Paul Mooney and others are allowed to tell some hard truths because it's going to be a punchline afterwards, and it's in the context of laughter, which is why he gets away with talking about such serious issues on a large platform. He is a comedian. We don't have people like Dr. Tommy Curry and other people who could break these issues down and could actually transform the black community's behavior and consciousness, including the treatment of black people who get a large platform. Instead of even canceling them, they're not even allowed in the door. The other people that you're talking about who are being canceled, whenever something affirms black people, like the Arsenio Hall show did inadvertently, and other situations where black people are affirmed, they are indeed canceled. And people from the LGBTQ community, et cetera, don't raise that issue, including a lot of black people who have a profile. They wait till the LGBTQ issue comes up, and white people give them lots of profile and support so they can actually talk about their agenda, which is the LGBTQ agenda, which is pretty much a culture that's a white agenda. But I agree with you if I hear you're saying that there's an issue of black people being canceled, period, and we should be concerned about that. But we should be more than concerned. We're relatively passive in the midst of our disrespect. The reason we're hearing so much about David Chappelle is because the force behind him is huge. It's called the white gay community, and they have a huge machine. So as someone said, I think Roland said earlier, this use of the N-word. We can add the B word. We can add all kinds of words that are insulting and divisive that he says that hurts black people in particular, like the N-word, that gets no critique. There's nobody trying to cancel over that. Well, that's white supremacy behavior. It needs to be looked at as well.
Thank you.
Michael, your question.
Cleo Monagos, Michael Imhotep. Yeah, that was me earlier talking about the N-word. So this is my critique here, and you can comment on this. With the baby being canceled, disinvited from festivals for talking 2 minutes, homophobic rant, but has songs dehumanizing black people. He gets invited to the festivals. Dave Chappelle gets attacked for comments about transgender people, things like this, but no critique. No comments about him using the N-word, things like this. Talk about how is it that black people are the only ones who you can say anything you want to about, whereas anybody else, when you talk about them, you get out of pocket their consequences and repercussions.
As I mentioned earlier, black people do not have the relentless focus, unified, funded, and resource machine that the LGBTQ community has as a result of white people in white spaces with white privilege and white audacity creating that space. And I want to say, so I won't sound dismissive, that the white gay community exists, including with all its privilege, in response to having been profoundly oppressed once upon a time in this country, murdered and killed and harassed and locked up. So it's not that their behavior and their subjectivity is not warranted. However, it doesn't include issues that are relevant to black people. But the bottom line is we don't have the machine. White supremacy has created a lot of conflict, a lot of people on different sides, including the LGBTQ identify and the black side, which is a bunch of black folks who should be getting together to resolve our issues across our collective. But we jump on bandwagons that get a lot of support sometimes because it's where the action is, it's where the money is, it's where the support is, where the media attention and where you can get some press. But that's what it is. When black people unlearn internalized white supremacy and learn to value diverse black voices and create a machine that actually will take no prisoners regarding what happens to diverse black people and are consistent and build institutions with that intent, like GLAAD and HRC does for gay people, particularly white people, we will have the same benefits, but we don't have that. We're divided. We have people who are powerful and who are doing great things within our community, but they don't get press. Not unless white people are benefiting from what we do, the press doesn't come.
Right. All right. Thanks, Cleo.
So I understand your point, but I'm failing to draw the correlation between what you've said and what David Johns brought up and what I've brought up and other people who have an issue with Dave Chappelle's remarks, in that while he was, making remarks against white supremacy and the like through his comedy and his commentary in this special, the problem isn't that he was just talking about the white LGBT plus community. It's the fact that in so doing, it's harming the black people within that community. So again, this is a marginalized within the marginalized community saying, hey, this actually hurts me more than my white counterpart. Can you stop? And yet and still we have people literally just saying no and screw you. So how do you reconcile the fact that it's black LGBT people saying this is hurting me? We are the ones who are actually going to be impacted by his commentary the most because he's a black man. How do you reconcile them actually pleading with the cis het community, myself and you and others? How are we to basically take them under the wing that is black people and let them know that we care?
All right, well, that's a lot. And that's a very important question, though. It's a lot. But let me tell you this, or let me explain this. Let me reiterate that I care about all black people. And my work, not abstractly, but directly affirms same-gender loving, trans, and bisexual people along with the rest of the black family. So we're not in any kind of conflict regarding the importance of affirming people who are same-gender loving, et cetera. But a word that you mentioned is key. You talked about that black people are being harmed. Now, before I get to how universal the harm is, I want to mention to you that David is a powerful, articulate brother who came on here and raises issues. And David is one person, just like I'm one person. There's not no one perspective on this. There's lots and lots of same-gender loving, including trans people, who are not bothered by Dave Chappelle, who indeed support Dave Chappelle. The white transgender person who committed suicide that he referenced, their family openly supports David Chappelle. So, and there's another well-known comedian named Flame Monroe, who was transgendered, who supports David Chappelle. So I want to make it clear that this is not a monolithic perspective. The National Black Justice Coalition is one organization, and there's other organizations with different perspectives, including the Black Men's Exchange, which doesn't share in terms of absolute precision to perspective of National Black Justice Coalition. Where we agree is that same-gender loving people, et cetera, trans, et cetera, should not be harmed. It should be allowed to be free. We agree there. However, the platform and the container in which we get to that point, we disagree with. I want to make sure that I talk about the harm. And I almost got emotional when I said that. In short, the white LGBT community and its paradigm prowess in politics has done harm to Black people. If you do a study of HIV and AIDS, and there's many other examples of how white gays wrote out the HIV and AIDS epidemic in terms of care and resources, they marginalized Black people, and by that act helped to create a epidemic that could have been further resolved if we were not put out by the white gay community. I can go on and on and on about the racism in the white gay community in terms of harm being done to Black people. What David Chappelle is talking about as well is harm being done to Black people. One of the powerful things that he says is, would you please stop punching down on my people? That's one of the final comments that Dave Chappelle says, actually after he had contextualized it quite clearly before he even said that throughout his hour and a half special. The harm is being done. And David Chappelle is concerned about that harm. Now, David Chappelle, to my knowledge, is not a same-gender loving or bisexual man. He made some inferences, I should say, during his interesting sexual inferences around glory holes, et cetera, during his stand-up. But he doesn't understand the nuances, the experience of same-gender loving people. What I think we should do, as I suggested with the baby or Jonathan Kirk, is that we should use these high-profile stimulations of the conversation to finally, collectively as a people, have a rational, Black-informed, Black-acculturated, historically considerate, contextually considered conversation about what's going on with the Black community, what's causing such a spectrum of perspectives, what is causing even a perspective that the baby articulated and that David Chappelle talked about. Instead of doing what white supremacy keeps doing, co-signing the dismissal and re-cancellation of a Black male voice, particularly one as powerful and as brilliant as David Chappelle has been with the Chappelle Show and other things that he's done, has been particularly powerful for Black people, which is why he had to walk away from the show, because white folks said, no, we got to control this. We got to control you. You're not letting us control you. We'll give you $50 million because y'all like money if you let us control you. And he said, no. That's powerful. So we need to be using him as somebody that we can go to or include in a larger conversation about Black bridge building, about Black people unlearning impulses that are anti-SGL or anti-trans or that are not considerate of gender nuance. We can talk about these issues we can talk about gender nuance from an African perspective and do a whole lot of educating. The reason I'm here in Colombia is I'll be speaking at the University of San Buenaventura in Cali, a predominantly Black city, about the epistemology of ancient African gender nuance versus contemporary gender constructs. Because they're having issues around manhood and masculinity and that anxiety which causes abuse of feminine people, particularly if they're male, that they want to help unpack and resolve. So this gender issue, which is a core underpinning of David's anxiety, we have to have a Black conversation about all these issues and include our diversity in respectful ways so we can resolve the conflict, not cancel people. And we should be able to critique. One thing that David said that I agree with is that we should have the opportunity to critique each other.
All right, Dr. Cleo Monago, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks for your perspective. We shall see what happens, but like I said, Dave made it clear last night, he does not care about people saying cancel him. He was real clear. Thanks, Cleo.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you all.
Folks, back to our road mark unfiltered video in just one moment.
time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on that.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
In Oregon, a white man is facing several charges for killing an unarmed black man. Ian Mackenzie Cranston has been indicted for second-degree murder, first-degree murder manslaughter, second-degree manslaughter, first-degree assault, and 2 counts of unlawful use of a deadly weapon. Cranston shot Barry Washington Jr. after an altercation outside of a bar on September 19th. Some say the fight started because Washington complimented Cranston's white girlfriend. Doesn't that sound familiar? Prosecutors have yet to add a bias crime charge. The investigation of whether or not the shooting was racially motivated is ongoing. Cranston was arrested the night of the incident but was released on a $10,000 bond. Since the indictment, Cranston remains in jail with no bond. Y'all, 2021, and we're still dealing with the look you in the eyeballs, compliment the white girlfriend. I mean, that is still where we are? Who wants to talk?
Well, it sounds like a modern day lynching. I mean, that's really what that is. It just has echoes of decades of brutality and terrorism that has wrought down on black people, supposedly in protection, quote unquote, of white womanhood. And so to see that he not only did that, but that apparently he was let out, like he's at home tonight, right? If I heard you correct, he's at home tonight, chilling at home, after murdering a black man for just merely giving a compliment to his white girlfriend is unconscionable. It's really infuriating to see that as far as we've come chronologically speaking in terms of years, we are exactly where we were decades ago in terms of lynching black men because they dare to gaze at a white woman.
Right, so just a correction. It seems like they let him out on $10,000 bond when he was arrested, but then since the indictment, thankfully he at least is still in jail. Attorney Allison, what are your thoughts?
First and foremost, my condolences to the friends and the family of Mr. Washington and to all of us that are tired of hearing these stories and all of the trauma that we're experiencing from seeing our brothers and sisters being murdered ruthlessly at the hands of police, at the hands of white people, and people just not caring. Condolences to all of us, and it's okay to turn off, devices if we feel triggered, first and foremost. I do believe that this is, 2021 Emmett Till all over again. And, I'm a clemency attorney, and I had no idea that quitting DOJ and launching my practice 11 months ago would, catapult me into, the public light. But I was tagged immediately as this was happening by so many people that wanted to bring it to my attention. And I'm glad to see that, at the time, just a couple of days ago, when I was getting tagged in the story, that, they were trying to get attention on this because nobody was talking about it in Oregon. And from my understanding, he allegedly looked or complimented the white girlfriend, and the boyfriend shot him dead in the middle of the bar, and people just looked like, and kept on going about their partying and drinking, and no sense of urgency or compassion or anything. So I'm glad to see that, you know, it takes social media and the push for people to talk about it and bring it to, you know, the limelight and attention for there now to be an indictment where he has been rearrested and being held. But this is disgusting, it's ridiculous, and at some point, some type of change has to happen. And like I said earlier, Monique, I honestly do believe that in order for there to be change, real change, we have to have bipartisan solutions and not the divisiveness. We on the panel understand what we're talking about, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But we can't go around calling people white supremacists and expect them to come to the table and work with a solution. We got a code switch, right? We've all infiltrated. It's doctors and attorneys on this panel and on this show, right? We've all infiltrated. We've gotten out with the information. So it's our job, our responsibility, our duty to come out to the community and teach them how to play the game so we can make these changes that actually will be viable and stick. It might not feel good, code switching a little bit, but pointing the fingers at these individuals in Oregon, for example, and calling them a white supremacist, that's not going to change anything. We're going to have to use some language that they want to hear, give them some type of incentive, because I honestly feel that's where we are right now as a country. We have to do something in order for everyone to get on the same page, because we're tired. We're tired, Monique. We don't need to see this no more.
Right. I agree with you that there definitely needs to be some bipartisanship. I mean, I just think that we have to have something other than white supremacists on the other side in order for it to be bipartisan. And I call them white supremacists because I just think we have to call a thing, or we're not free. My free speech is decoded, and that's why a racist is a racist and a white supremacist is a white supremacist. And maybe there are people, you know, I get criticized by people for going in the rooms the way that I go in, and I know that I'm not soft-spoken, but maybe there are people that can do it even better than I, because I just no. If you're not a white supremacist, I agree with you, Tammy. Don't call them one. But see, the thing about being a white supremacist is that us trying to sit down and have a conversation when your primary tenet is that you are meant to control me, there's a basic kind of non-starter there for me. But that's just me. Dr. Domingo, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that this also reminds me of Trayvon Martin, where we had to fight and go to social media to get Zimmerman arrested again because he was also let out the same night. And it goes to something Dr. Davis was saying earlier, you know, we can't let up. And I think people need to realize that we're not going to let up. We're going to keep fighting. It also reminds me of the fact that we still haven't passed the anti-lynching bill in this country, because this is a case that might be able to qualify for that, as well as the case of Ahmaud Arbery as well, because we're talking about people who are not officers of the law who are enacting these actions. And Mitch McConnell is on record.
But why haven't we passed the anti-lynching bill? Forgive me, Dr. Domingo, for interrupting, but why is it, whose filibuster was it, whose obstructionist tactics was it that kept us, which one white man kept us from passing the bill and had us in there like standing around with our heads spinning with green pea soup coming out of it because we couldn't even get the most basic thing done without who I guess Tammy wants me to call the fine senator from the state of whatever. Go ahead, Dr. Domingo.
Rand Paul, no doubt. And Senator Cory Booker talked about just last week how they might have a workaround as it relates to that. But that's something that we need to keep that public pressure on, because these are our priorities as well. And so I don't know what Schumer and Booker are going to be working on together, but these guys, these Rand Pauls and McConnells of the world, they seem to know the system better than the Democrats do. And I think once we realize, again, they realize he's not an honest broker, I want to see what Senator Booker is going to put forward, because he said there might be a workaround. Or why wasn't this workaround around 6, 7, 8 months ago? You know, this is important to us. The Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, this is important. And there are only going to be more cases like this. And again, we're just talking about the ones that make it to the news. And we know there are more.
Come on, doctor. Mars, yes, and the Empire Lynch.
Dr. Avis.
Level ever.
The thing is, you're exactly right about Rand Paul's the problem. It's not just Rand Paul. I don't trust the Republic. As much as I would like to say, my dear sister, yes, we need bipartisan solutions. We're not going to get bipartisan solutions. How much more proof do we have to see that there is a completely toxic element in our political system that doesn't give a damn about doing anything in a bipartisan way? How many more instances of proof do we need to see of that? We saw this specific tactic, for example, that they plotted around. The Republicans specifically, the night that President Obama was elected, they met in a hotel in Washington, D.C., and came to a political decision. Now, think about the context. This was at the height of the mortgage crisis. People were losing their homes. People were losing their life savings. People were losing their jobs. And you know what they said they would do for the American people? Not a damn thing.
Yeah.
That was their decision, that they were going to do not a damn thing for the American people, and instead what they would do is oppose any and everything that President Obama put forward, which they did. And they are doing the very same thing now with the Biden administration. They have zero credibility when it comes to this issue of wanting to reach a bipartisan solution on anything. So in my opinion, the desire for a bipartisan solution is a fool's errand. We need to figure out how we can take enough power to be able to do what we need to do without one Republican vote, because that is the only way we will have progress on those issues that are critically important to Black people, period.
And we've got people on the streets right now. I got to go to the next topic. We got people on the streets right now trying to teach people how to spell filibuster so we can fix it.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A Black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on there.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig? Folks, I want to go to my next story, and this is quite an interesting story. We talk about what is happening in Virginia. It's real strange, folks. This story in Virginia, where these neighbors are tormenting a black family. The Martinez family says their neighbor has been playing recordings of racial slurs and monkey noises since they arrived in the neighborhood several months ago. Watch this. Now, the police have been called several times because no crime has been committed. Nobody is being arrested. Joining us right now is Tim Anderson. He is an attorney with Anderson and Associates from Virginia Beach, Virginia. He is representing the family pro bono. Tim, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. First of all, how long has this family lived in this area? How long has this been going on?
So, hey, thanks for having me on the show, Roland. I'm glad to be here. So I'm an attorney in Virginia Beach, and I'm watching what's happening from 30,000-foot view the same way as we all are. We have not made contact with this family yet, but we have identified multiple causes of actions that she can bring. She's not been able to make any progress with the police, and that's fine. There may not be criminal laws here, but we are trying to communicate with this family to let them know, one, my law firm's ready to go to help them, and two, there's plenty of civil actions that could be brought that could put an end to this nonsense. This is in my hometown, and we are watching this horrifically happening here and want to get involved.
Okay, so so you're not officially representing the family. You are offering your services to this family pro bono after you saw this story in news reports.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. I've been a lawyer here for 21 years. This is outrageous. This doesn't and shouldn't be happening anywhere, but it's certainly not going to happen in my hometown without me at least trying to get involved. I'm always attracted to big fights like this, and it's not a money thing for us. It's a matter of doing what's right and making sure that that people understand that there's civility, and Virginia Beach is a great place, and we have a great community, and unfortunately we have some people in every community that act like this, and we're going to do our best to attract this family to come to us and help them get through this moment.
Okay, so what is weird here is the cops saying we can't do nothing. I'm sorry, are there not noise ordinances?
Well, yeah, so there's certainly noise ordinances, but it's based on decibels in Virginia. And so here's what I understood from the CNN reports, and our local newspaper actually published a story about it. Here's basically the historical background. This family lives there. This is a veteran family. And there was a noise complaint with her neighbor, and she called the police. And since that, the neighbor has now escalated and retaliated with motion sensors being pointed at the house, and this monkey music, and the clip that you just showed. And that is not, there's nothing criminal, at least as far as the police are concerned, and nothing criminal as far as the magistrate's concerned, because apparently she went to the magistrate and reported this. Those aren't crimes, but that doesn't mean there's not civil remedy. There's civil remedy that exists under Virginia law for nuisances, and we actually even in Virginia have an archaic little statute, which is very rarely found, which says that insulting words is actionable. So if you insult somebody to the point where it would cause them such distress, and the actual code specifically says breaching the peace, which that in any view is certainly breaching of the peace, that's actionable under civil law. And so all she needs is a lawyer to file a lawsuit to put a stop to it. That's it. And so it may not be a criminal remedy, but there's certainly civil remedy. and hopefully they'll use us or somebody to take this action to the appropriate court.
Well, again, hopefully they get some kind of relief, because this is absolutely crazy. Tim Anderson, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot. This makes no sense to me, Robert. This is nuts. This is pure harassment of this family, and the cops said they can't do anything?
Well, it's interesting to his point, because the reason that it's difficult for cops to do anything in a situation like this is that, let's take the contrapositive. There's somebody playing rap music that has the N-word all strewn throughout it. Would you want that to be criminally actionable? Now, what should be actionable under intentional infliction of emotional distress, under a clear civil penalty, also disturbing the peace, if it does go above the proper decibel level. And I do think the family absolutely should take every civil remedy possible. But also, this is why I always keep guns around, because if these people are playing this monkey music across the street from my house.
Here we go.
So just to recap, from across the street, 6.5 Creedmoor, 18-inch barrel, 10 and 7 twist. You're going to want yourself a 7x24 scope on it, just in case you want to get them across the street. Now, if they are close up, you want your mini AR, so you can get a 3.5-inch barrel for cookie cutter on it with a collapsible all tactical stock on it. You should be good, because you still get your 223, your 5.56 ammo going. You don't burn all of your powder, but you really don't need to go on that fast at that distance. So I think these people need to invest in a nice NAGA membership to National Association of African American Gun Association, because they teach you all these things to make sure you can be safe. Because somebody's playing across the street, there's only so long before they come across the street.
Or
DeMario, you have any idea what the hell DeMario, you have any idea what the hell Robert was just talking about?
I do. I know.
I know what Robert's talking about. I actually have a membership to that organization. I'm here in Oklahoma.
Hey, Scott, stop talking, Scott. DeMario's talking.
I'm here in Oklahoma, so I have no
DeMario,
problem
go.
I'm a gun owner. I agree with a lot of what Robert has said. I definitely think I'm glad they have an attorney. I was going to say, hell, I'll come and represent them, because I do see several causes of action. I do believe in intentional infliction of emotional distress. I do believe that can also be some civil rights claims. Or you could have what's called a 1985.3, where you got two or more people who are conspiring together to take someone's civil rights. And they're trying to run those people out of their home. There's no question about it. That is a civil rights violation, I believe, that's happening there. And then I think there's a hate crime there. I mean, when you are saying nigger, talking about nigger and monkey towards black people in this type of fashion, I think that's a hate crime. So I think that they should be sued, and I believe that they should be successful. And hopefully that family has some money, because they need to be held totally accountable, no question about it.
Well,
and that's another reason why I'm happy that I live in a black neighborhood.
Yeah, maybe. Both of my colleagues are right, and that surely makes us feel good. But maybe not. This is what he needs to do, and I'm sure he's going to do it. You start with a cease and desist letter in no uncertain terms and lay out what the civil or administrative violations are vis-a-vis ordinances, and give them an opportunity to cease and desist, right? They will have to respond, or they get a lawyer to respond. Then, if they don't respond and the bad acting or the bad acts continue, right? Then you file for what we call a temporary restraining order. It's a civil lawsuit, but you seek an injunctive relief. And to my colleagues, I do think you could argue irreparable harm. There's statutes that are immediately being violated based on what their lawyer has indicated, right? There's irreparable harm. There's likelihood of success on its merits. It's certainly in the public interest that you're not blasting the N-word and anything else. And you seek a TRO under the local laws in Virginia Beach. And you get a judge who will be offended. Most would be highly offended by this conduct. And they'll sign an order barring them temporarily from engaging in this bad conduct. Eventually, you get a preliminary injunction, and then you win the lawsuit. And you can still get damages, even though you got a TRO, because you're going to sue for damages, right? That takes the energy out of that racist family, if you will. And then you get community support for it, which is going to be hard not to get community support for it. But they need to get into court. And then lastly, they need to go to the government of Virginia Beach and see whether they have a certificate of occupancy, see whether they are in compliance with their electrical code and all these other things that you have to do and get the city to enforce it, right? So this is what we call hitting back and hitting hard. Eventually, the broadcast will stop because it becomes too expensive and too offensive even for the bad actors to engage in that conduct. That's what I would do.
And Roland, now.
All right, folks. Robert, real quick.
Yeah, I will say now, just in case what Scott said doesn't work. So this is your mini AR. Flip it out this way. You pull out that way. All right? And then you're ready to roll. And then if you pop right back in, fold back up, goes right in your jacket, and you're good to go. So in case Scott's plan doesn't work.
That'll bring the police out, Robert. That'll bring the police out.
In your own house, in your own home. In my house, in my
Scott, can't nobody hear? Stop, Scott. Can't nobody hear both of y'all when y'all talking? Robert finished and Scott. Can't nobody hear?
Always call my name first.
Scott,
ain't even done
Scott, let me say it again. Hey, Scott, let me say it again. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Now, when they mute your microphone, then we gonna get it done. Robert, finish your point.
You wouldn't dare.
Look, Scott, the point is, in your house, in your home, to make sure these people keep what they're doing across the street. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure this stays civil. And anybody who's playing that kind of music in loud volumes, they are a loose cannon. I can't trust what you're going to do. My job is to protect me and my wife and my dog and my property away from those people. So whatever that may be required, you're having something that fits under your jacket. It's very useful in this situation.
It's very important, Roland. It's important for your show for me to say that you cannot shoot somebody from your property to the property across the street.
That's the mini one. This is the one in the house one. This is the in the house one. They don't go that far.
I want to make sure my brother Roland's show is
okay. All right.
It's a short barrel. It's not going that far.
Y'all can have all that. Y'all can have all that back and forth during the break. Back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on? Sure. It's wireless. Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password? Buick Envision 2021. Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable. That's a really tight spot. Don't worry. I used to hate parallel parking. Me too. Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you. All of
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared. You dig? A South Los Angeles community group. They're fighting back after their bid for the historic Crenshaw Mall was rejected. Downtown Crenshaw Rising says their $115 million offer was the highest one for the property, but it wasn't accepted. Let's talk about it. Joining me now from L.A. is the executive director for Downtown Crenshaw Rising, Damian Goodman. Damian, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered. So you say you have the highest bid. How do you know that? Has it been confirmed that y'all had the highest bid and it was turned down?
Yes, Roland. I mean, and let's back up a little bit because I think people say we're a development group. We're much more than that. We're the community. Over 300 community organizations and a membership of over 2,400 people came together when we found out that our Crenshaw Mall, the most significant asset in Black Los Angeles, which sits at the heart of Crenshaw and King Boulevard in Leimert Park community, that it was to be sold to outside developers that were closely connected to Donald Trump. And so using our history of organizing, along with bringing together some of the best experts in community-centered development and people-centered planning, we put together a bid to bring them all under community control. We didn't want to see it falling into the hands of outside exploiters who were going to exacerbate the gentrification crisis that is rampaging our community like so many other Black urban communities across America. And so part of that process involved bringing together the many philanthropists and the many social impact investors throughout the country who, too, recognize this challenge of gentrification, where all the development coming in seeks to undo and literally lead to a cultural erasure of the Black people that are there. And we raised over $60 million, $25 million in social impact investors, over $35 million in philanthropy, and submitted a $115 million bid, which was higher than the bid that Deutsche Bank, that famous bank of criminals throughout the globe, accepted from Heritage Development Group that was backed by a person who's on Putin's list, a man by the name of Len Blavatnik. So that's what we sit right now.
First of all, how much was their bid? How much was their bid?
It's been reported that they paid $112 million.
Okay, so $112 million. Was a reason given as to why their bid was chosen and not yours?
Well, I mean, at its core, Roland, and I want to emphasize this point because there was a tweet that went viral that talked about our struggle, and the comments were filled with fellow Black people who've been engaged in real estate activities or business loans who have similarly been told that their money wasn't green, that even though they submitted the highest offer, even though their qualifications were superior, that they weren't qualified. And so Deutsche Bank, again, that infamous bank that is known as the lender to Donald Trump and has all kind of nefarious activities that they've been caught red-handed with across the world, they said, well, you're not qualified. He was more qualified. This man's been bankrupt personally and has had his companies go bankrupt before. Comparatively, we brought in to assist the community in its engagement the two architecture firms that are responsible for the most iconic Black structures built in the 21st century. The Smithsonian Museum, National Museum of African American History and Culture, and Equal Justice Initiatives, a museum or a memorial for peace and justice down there in Montgomery. Collectively, along with some of the biggest developers on the planet, those that did the World Trade Center after 9/11, we submitted them a fully financed offer, a plan that was developed for the community that sought to bring in affordable housing, not housing we couldn't afford, sought to bring space for the incubation of entrepreneurship businesses that were owned locally, space for worker-owned cooperatives, green space. We presented the whole plan, and we had the money, we had the community, and we had the plan, and they said that we were not qualified to do the project.
And were they saying that because you did not have mall development experience, management experience? What was their rationale?
We brought in the second largest real estate operation on the planet to be our consultants. I want to be clear about that because there's a difference between where Black people tie themselves to projects where they're just the Black front and the decisions are being made by other people who are outside the community. No, the development company that we brought in, literally, who redid the World Trade Center after 9/11, along with multiple other projects throughout the world in so many respects, was partnered with the second largest real estate operation on the planet that is operating malls today successfully all throughout Los Angeles, the country, and globe. This was not a question of qualifications, Roland, and again, we got to hit that over and over again. This was a racist process by a corrupt bank that was acting, and this is the kicker, man, they were acting at the bequest of public pension funds. The investors who invested and purchased the mall, who were to sell it, contracted. They were public pension funds, right? These entities that are filled with worker money from Black and brown people in this community and throughout other communities across the country. They contracted with DWS, which engaged in this corrupt and racist process. Right now, civil rights organizations, along with ourselves, we're looking at engaging in litigation that lifts up that 1866 Civil Rights Act the same act that was invoked by Byron Allen when he was denied his opportunity to engage in the acquisition of radio and other multimedia companies. We're looking into that right now, and I think we'll have an announcement quickly. This was old-fashioned racism. This is old-fashioned denial of the opportunity for Black people to own, live, build, and thrive in the community that we occupy.
Questions for our panel. I'll start with Mustafa.
Well, brother, thank you for the work that you're doing. I've spent almost 30 years on place-based work, so I've seen time and time again how difficult it is for Black and Brown-led projects to actually, make it to fruition. So my question is, because this was a community-driven project that you had strong community support, what has been the outcry from the community, and who all have you all been engaging with to hold folks accountable?
Well, as my good friend from the South says, people are mad as a wet hen. I think in so many respects, we've been told that we did not have the money, we did not have the qualifications, and sometimes that's been true. But here, that wasn't the case. And this was ours. And we did the building. We brought together the civil rights organization. We brought together the renters and the homeowners and multiple unions that were many units that were invested in this project. So people are here and they're ready to fight. Not just because the person who they sold it to literally is a sexual assaulting racist by the name of David Schwartzman of Heritage Development Group. You can just Google him and find out his history. It has a long history of being anti-tenant, anti-merchant, and violating the Fair Housing Act and other civil rights acts. Not only that, but because, we did what everyone says we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to come together. And if Black people just came together, things would get better, while ignoring that we must operate in a society that is predicated on systemic racism, where the decisions are being made by white people far away who want to continue the exploitation of our community. We seek to change that entirely by having a project that uplifts, not uproots this community. And that's a threat. That's not just a threat here in Crenshaw. That's a threat to the way these people do business throughout the country and world.
Michael.
Hey, brother, look, I applaud you for what you're doing, man, and I know it's a tough job. I used to be a general contractor on a construction project here in Detroit, so I understand, for a Black-owned company. Quick question for you. You mentioned public pension funds, okay? And a lot of times money managers will loan pension fund money to developers, and the developers will take that pension fund money and come into our communities and gentrify us out of our own communities. Can you talk about, again, the role that pension funds played? What was that statement you made about public pension funds?
Brother, you hit the nail on the head. And two of the pension funds, one was the state of Michigan, and the other was the Detroit Police and Fire Pension Fund System. So this was not just pension funds in Los Angeles and California, including the Los Angeles County employees and the UC Board of Regents. These were pension funds throughout the country, and some of the biggest pension funds throughout the nation. New York City employees and New York City teachers, right? And so this is public money, right? Because this is the money that comes directly from the public agency along with the member match, so public employees. And they are a $5.2 trillion investment operation throughout the globe. Collectively, that's how much money these pension funds invest throughout the globe. And much of their investments are into real estate. Well, we found out, and this was news to me, and we're pretty aware. We've listened to people talk about getting pension funds to divest from fossil fuels. Obviously, there's that amazing history of us engaging in the anti-apartheid movement, where we focused on pension funds like the UC Board of Regents to divest from companies that were doing business there. Well, these public pension funds are literally funding some of the biggest and most parasitic and harmful developments in urban communities like Los Angeles. And so they control the decision, along with Deutsche Bank DWS, to decide where the mall that sits in the Black community went to. And I want to be clear, we did all the work. We were open. We've had literally over 100 community meetings and a community vision. This was the product and the plan that we were talking about before, which more people can read about at downtowncrenshaw.com, is a community vision. Well, we weren't the only Black-led team. We were the only Black community-led team, but we weren't the only Black-led team that was passed over. You had some of the biggest Black developers in America that were passed over as well. So that's where you get to, again, these public pension funds, led by the same people who don't look like me and you, 98%. 98% of the people who control investments, major investments in the country, are not Black and not women. 98%.
Right.
So who were they talking to? They didn't even, I don't think they even had seen, and nor could they imagine that a community group could come together, raise this much money, bring together a professional team with expertise both in community development and large-scale projects. It floored them, so they had to come up with some ridiculous reasons as to why they denied it, but at the core of it remains stone-cold racism, and they will be held to account for it.
All right, thank you.
Teresa?
Yeah, Damian, one, I applaud your efforts. Look, I live in the city of brotherly love where these conversations are happening daily as some are led to build areas of real estate that and gentrify areas, and then some really do have a community-focused approach. So I think for me, my question to you, and one, I just learned a lot, and I'm sitting here looking at your website about literally the plan. This is probably the best bill out of downtowncrenshaw.com of the message, the plan, the vision, and sign the petition. So my question to you is, how do you and what do you need from your other partners outside of signing the petition? Like I said before, I'm in Philadelphia, but I'm sure there's some advocates here that would love to help you or share their stories. Are you guys contacting elected officials? So what needs to be done so nationwide this can also, again, I think it's happening in every city. We just don't know, right? But I think this is a foolproof plan that is like, look, this is what one guy is doing, the midst of 300 organizations is doing, and we need to take note and we need to support. So what can people do?
I appreciate that question, sister. And, we have always said that this was more than about a mall. This was about a movement. This was about both saying to this Crenshaw community undergoing the threat of gentrifications like so many others, that community ownership is an imperative, and that we have several impediments that need to be knocked down along the way. And so we got to come together. We've got to come together locally. We've got to come together nationally. We even have to come together internationally in saying that we have a right to be in our spaces, saying that there is a role for elected officials to use their voices, and some did and some didn't. And that there is a role for elected officials to bring these entities like these public pension funds and these foreign banks like Deutsche Bank, who are doing business in our community in a racially discriminatory manner, to be called to account. So we're absolutely going to sue them. We're going to absolutely continue to organize. We're absolutely going to continue to build off and build that greater movement of over 300 community groups that are working with us, that are members, like literally members. I mean, that's the other key piece of it. As members of the organization, when we bought the mall, we were going to provide shares to everyone so that we could collectively own in this space and see the development that is building on the best of us with something that didn't go. This is not something that went toward even the enrichment of the board members. As a nonprofit board member, we are prohibited from having any profits go to us personally. This was about community empowerment. So what we've seen along the way is that those, be they in Detroit, be they in Philadelphia, New York, D.C., have wanted to be engaged in this process both to learn and to support and to bring back to their own communities this model so that they can do the same. And that's where we are firmly focused on doing, continuing to build that out, continuing to tell this story. While we elongate this campaign, we know that while the mall's ownership has changed and it's now in the hands of Heritage along with Len Blavatnik, that we will continue to fight, looking at other successful efforts, both in the history of this country, the history of our ancestors, and even more recently, just in San Francisco, where developers were forced on their knees and forced to sell developments to the community's desired owner. And so that's going to be our goal. That's going to be our focus. And we have the winds of our ancestors, and we ride on the wings of our ancestors and the winds of change behind us.
Thank you.
Damian Gutman, Executive Director of Downtown Crenshaw Rising. We really appreciate you joining us on the show.
Appreciate you, Roland.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Betty is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon. So now, she's free to become Bear Hug Betty. Settle in, kids. You'll be there a while. Ooh, where you going?
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?